Getting your French driver's license is one of the most intimidating and complicated elements of settling in France. It's one of the things that intimidates the crap out of most of us who move here, largely because it can take up to 2 years, which is on the extreme, but it can take a long time and cost thousands of euros. Hello, puppy. And then the benefit is you can bring a dog with you anywhere if you happen to have a car, and that's one of the reasons I want to get one. Thankfully, I managed to do it in 3 weeks. And I want to tell you how. And you might be wondering, don't you live in Paris? Why would you want to drive, especially in Paris? And you have an American license. Doesn't that work? Just pump the brakes a second. We're going to get to all of that. The thing is that anything that has to do with the French administration is its own form of a nightmare, especially when you don't speak French, or if your French isn't that great, or if, like me, even though my French is good, it's still the French bureaucracy. The French themselves are terrified of it. The thing is, the danger was absolutely overblown. And ultimately, you get out of it what you put into it. That was my discovery. So here's the story of how I got my French driver's license, why I did it in the first place, and how you might be able to do it yourself much quicker and cheaper than you might be thinking. So why did I want to get my license? I live in Paris, the land of sweet walkable freedom. I've got a bike, the metro. Occasionally I use the bus, except I hate using the bus. I've lived here for almost 5 years, and I've never needed a car. That's the point. I don't want a car, at least not in Paris. But I do want a car for the rest of France. We fall into this really bad habit of thinking of Paris as all of France, which is clearly untrue. There's an insane amount of stuff to see and do around this country. And while the TGV and slower trains will get you far, they can't get you everywhere. They won't take you to vineyards and hilltop castles. They won't take you to the beaches of Normandy or Mont Saint-Michel. Without a car, it's really hard to get to places like this. Actually, especially where we are right now. Maybe you could get a bus all the way to Mont Saint-Michel, which I don't want to take a bus anyways, but to come to a nice angle across the bay like this, you can't do that on a bus. You need a car. So why get a license? Because I want to explore the rest of this dang country already. And I hope to take you with me. Unfortunately, my American license is not going to cut it. My life's experience for naught. I'm not going to be editing this video till later. Didn't expect to be vlogging or getting my license or anything right now. But I really want to get my license because I just imagine it as being a huge quality of life improvement. Being able to get outside of Paris to explore the countryside. I have this image in my head of getting in like an old Land Rover Defender, gallivanting across the country, dog in the front seat, drone following right behind the whole way. And I just can't because after being here for a year, my American license is no longer valid. I can't even rent cars anymore. I've had that American license for 20 years. 20 years. So I'm no stranger to the art of driving. We're filming this on Thanksgiving weekend. Yesterday was Thanksgiving and today is the day after Thanksgiving, Black Friday. But the reason I bring that up is because growing up, Thanksgiving, we go to my grandparents. It's like 4 hours away. Somebody honking behind me? Oh no, somebody's coming in the wrong way back there. I think I've got a spot opening up here. Finally! And this guy's gonna snag it. Cool. You could drive like halfway across the country in 4 hours on the right roads. On the wrong roads you can't, but obviously. But getting my Washington license was a pretty classic story. I got my learner's permit at 15 and a half, early morning driver's ed classes over the summer, passed the test on my 16th birthday because why not? And away we go. My first car was a 1970 Chevelle Malibu. Sadly, I had to sell it in college because it was literally always in need of repair and I could not afford that. I swapped it for a maroon Honda Accord, which got me around for 5 years before I sold that and moved to West Africa. It was the last car that I ever owned, which is crazy to me actually to think about now that I haven't owned a car in a decade. That's nuts. Living on a hospital ship in West Africa came with a literal boatload of Land Rovers, so I didn't have to buy any there. And consulting back in the States meant that I had a new rental every week. I have a different car pretty much every week. I used to actually get more reasonable cars, but now that they don't charge me for the less reasonable cars, I tend to get the less reasonable cars more often. It isn't an exaggeration to say that I've driven for most of my life. That's also kind of crazy. I've been driving for more than half of my life. Wow, okay. But moving to Paris 5 years ago, that completely erased my need for a car at all.
It's really hard to tell what this cop's arms are doing, but I do get the feeling that I should probably get ready to go.
So why get my license now? Largely because I want the freedom to explore and to take you with me next spring. I have road tripping plans for weddings and castles and so much more.
All that road trip planning, by the way, I'll share the planning process over on Patreon. So if you like road trips and you want to be part of the members only planning club, planning trips to the Loire Valley, through Europe, or even to North Africa, you know where to go. And speaking of which, thanks to today's patron producer, Tracy L. Glad to have you here, Tracy. The other reason that getting my license now made sense was because I'm going to need to start the process of applying for my citizenship bid here in France.
It's a good sign of assimilation to get my license as well. So all in all, just a good winner of an idea. And
here's the thing. If you're an American and you're moving to France, you have 1 year to exchange your driver's license for a French one. After that, if you don't make the exchange, it's no longer valid to drive, rent, or buy anything. Although to be fair, with an American license, you can't buy a car here anyways, so there's that. The biggest catch is that only a dozen or so states even have agreements in place with the French government to make the exchange in the first place. Washington State, where I'm from, does not have an agreement. I did have a Texas driver's license once upon a time, and if I'd had the money and the wherewithal, I probably could have gone back, gotten my Washington license swapped for a Texan one, and then made the exchange here. But I didn't have the time or the money to make that happen. So, yeah, that sucks. If you're following along with my vlog that first year in France, I also wasn't certain I would even be allowed to stay, nor whether that first year in limbo would count against my time on my visa. Thankfully, I was allowed to stay. But unfortunately, I got my official residency permit literally the day before my 1-year anniversary in the country. So my window of opportunity had closed. So, if I wanted a driver's license, I had no choice but to pass the test. Fear from ignorance. Why I did not get this before. The thing is that when you move here, or if you know French people, you immediately start hearing horror stories that make you more than a little nervous to get started. One friend who had his American license and French citizenship told me that it took him nearly a year and a half. He wanted to test out instead of taking any courses, and they continually bumped him to the bottom of the list as a result, taking 6 months to take his first try at the written test, which he failed, 6 more months at attempt number 2, which he passed, and then another 6 months to get to the practical test. French friends will tell you it costs 2,000 to 3,000 euros and requires dozens of hours driving with an instructor. Another American here recently told me how it took him 2 years to get through it all. Thousands of euros, months if not years, and who knows how much time spent in instruction. Nothing about this sounded good. Absolutely nothing. Cap this off with my old lifestyle and daily vlogging, and taking something on as taxing as this would have put me right over the edge. Never mind reading an entire driving rulebook in French. As with any number of other seemingly simple projects in life, while I was vlogging, I could not do both. When I burned out in August and then got COVID, which I forgot about, I finally took some time to rest. I was forced to, so let's not pretend I earned any points for wisdom, but it was well worth it. As I started to feel my energy returning, but still couldn't look at video editing software without getting nauseous, I started surveying the things I'd never gotten to, but had always wanted to do. Getting my license was right near the top of the list, something my friends and I kept talking about doing, but then psyched ourselves out of every time.
also, when are you gonna get yours?
Stop pressuring me.
Finally, one afternoon, on a total whim, I was walking by one of the driving schools I had marked on my map and decided to step in.
Hi, toi.
I figured real information would break the spell, or at least calm the myths that had been floating around in my skull. I expected it would be something like 6 months to a year and cost me at least $2,000. Thankfully, Arnaud at La Maison de Conducteur was in that day, and we sat down, and he laid it out for me. Since I had a foreign license and plenty of experience, all I needed to do was take 6 hours of instruction with him in 3 2-hour blocks, pass the written test, and then pass the practical exam. It would cost me only 720 euros, and if I pressed hard and actually passed my tests, could be done within the month. I was stunned. That was it? He told me that he was a little more expensive than I might find elsewhere, but I'd get more one-on-one instruction. And I hardly heard him because I was too busy sprinting to gather the documents he needed to get started right away. I literally ran out of his office. I was like, I'm gonna give you these documents right now and we're gonna get this started because I cannot wait any longer. Also, the price was so good, let's be honest. compared to 2 grand, it's expensive, but compared to 2,000 euros? The French rules and regulations for the road are called le code de la route, which is incidentally what you say you pass as well when talking about the test. Je passe le code de la route demain, something like that. I already had a book on the code from 2020, and I can grab it actually. Out of here. I started reading and studying my butt off. And this is where speaking French comes in handy. I took the book in 2 3-hour sessions. It's all broken up into these different colored segments so you can kind of see what sections are where.
All right, well, I put in about a total of 4 hours today, and I'm halfway through the book already. I'm passing probably on average 80-90% on every test. Some of them have been hitting 100, some of them less so, because one of the confusing things about how these tests are laid out is you've got multiple choice questions, like 4 options, where 1, 2, or 3 of the options could be correct. So you have to actually choose multiple options, and that gets a little bit confusing sometimes, especially because it does get a little bit tricky as to like, there's some pseudo trick questions in there for sure, but feeling really, really good overall.
I actually finished it before I was officially registered in the system and passed almost all the tests within it. But I had to wait another day or so to start taking Arnaud's online practice tests, which as soon as I could, I failed pretty much all of those.
I mean, considering that I just signed up for this course yesterday, yeah. Why haven't I done this sooner? Oh, I know, because I've never had the time or energy to be fully motivated to do it. And also scared. The ignorance portion counts for a lot.
Thankfully, he had his own book, which I left at Lindsay's place, and you've seen in my vlog before, a much better book, and I dove into that with the same vigor. 2 more intensive 3-hour sessions later, and I completed his book too. The weird thing about the code is that there's no official book, like a state-issued set of regulations that you study from. They're all private companies who work more or less closely with the companies that issue the exams. So each book might actually have extra bits or omit entire concepts depending on which one you get.
Here's another one. They have a question that asks what the number 1 factor in mortal accidents is. They claim it's la vitesse excessive, so speed. I marked alcohol because a few pages earlier on this graph, alcohol is put at 26%. And speed is 18%? That's not even a trick question. They just like lied to me.
Which, I mean, of course, there's no way that that's gonna come back and bite me in the ass later. Thankfully, Arnaud's book was a step more complete than this one. It was also done in a closer collaboration with the test administrators, so when I started passing the practice tests, I felt increasingly confident.
Yeah, I feel really confident, which hopefully is not just setting me up to have the rug pulled out from underneath me.
I still wasn't able to take the written test until I was fully registered in the system after that, which took another 2 weeks.
It doesn't mean we can't start driving next week or Saturday. Start testing, make sure that I actually can drive, get some vocabulary. He'll run me through the rigors and hopefully just kind of run through it really quickly from there.
We started driving while we waited, so that was good. Each drive was about 2 hours long and almost entirely outside of Paris.
Good looking car. First time I've gotten into a car in the driver's seat in a long time. I have a feeling I might need to adjust the seat a little bit, but not too much.
Contrary to popular belief, there are no driving tests within the city of Paris. It makes sense because it's already chaos. So instead, each test is administered in a suburb outside the city. It follows then that to practice with Arnaud, I would drive outside of the city.
Halfway point, I'll just say. It's funny, it's actually really funny how like I'm not stressed overall, but there's like this low key stress of like having to keep track of a lot of things at once. And my uncertainty in when cars have priority coming in from the right, I'm really close. I'm closing in on understanding that, but there's some tweaks to the rules that are strange. And as you know, roundabouts have multiple rules. Everything has multiple rules that I'm having to home in on. There's a lot going on all at once. Anyways, we'll see how I do on the trip home, but I have stuff to work on for sure.
While I knew how to drive and passed the test on a manual transmission, there are a lot of things that are different between driving in France and the States that really caught me off guard. First, the signage. I learned about this in my book learning, but the signs here are different and superfluous. Not to mention that the speed limits change so frequently, you genuinely have almost no idea what the speed limit is at most times, unless that's the number one thing you're paying attention to. That's how I feel about it, at least. Things change so quickly, and for no apparent reason, that you'll see what look like contradictory signs all over the place.
There's 100 pages. 110 out of 300 pages dedicated just to being able to understand what's happening with the signage.
And what do they mean? What the heck what? Now the arrows are switched?
What? What? Is this even, what is this? A wahana? No. No, what? Like this, for example, it means that on this narrow little stretch, I get to go first, and the other person doesn't. Whereas this one means I have to wait. The up arrow, that's my arrow. I don't want to wait, but I have to. Obviously, there's a McDonald's nearby, or cows crossing. I don't see any cows, though. X marks the spot. These guys, if they've got red on them, are to let you know that there is a road that's exiting into traffic right next to it. And if there are a bunch of them that don't have red, watch out. You got a corner coming up. Don't run off the corner. This guy means that at the next intersection, you have priority. That's what that little crossbar thing is. It's part of the intersection. It's also starting to rain. This means that if you go in, there's no coming back out. It's a sans issue, or without exit. I actually really like this one. This sign is probably one of the most ridiculous signs to me. This sign indicates that the next intersection is an uncontrolled intersection. So rather than put 2 stop signs up to stop 2 sides of that traffic to let the other go through, they put 4 of these up to let everybody know it's a free-for-all coming up, boys. I hate this. I hate this whole concept. The whole the right-of-way thing, it gets kind of ridiculous.
Which brings us to the pride of French drivers through the ages. Priorite à droite. This seems simple enough. When entering an uncontrolled intersection, whoever is on the right has the right of way. But this isn't just for small country roads or suburban intersections. This is for literally any situation where there isn't explicit signage. Are you on a main arterial doing 50 kilometers an hour and come upon a small single-lane road on the right? You'd better cede passage. Same thing doing 70 kilometers an hour just outside the city and a tiny intersection pops up from behind a wall and forest-filled curve in the road? You'd better cede that passage. This seems pretty straightforward in theory, but when you're driving and trying to keep track of the millions of things that are going on around you in the city, especially, this one caught me off guard so many times. I'm already trying to figure out which of the 3 layers of speed limit signs actually apply to me when someone appears on my right and may or may not have the right of way. Are the blocky lines on the ground blocky enough to indicate that they have to yield to me? Or are they thin enough to say that I have to give way? And don't get me started on roundabouts. Outside of Paris, most are controlled to give priority to traffic already in the roundabout, which makes sense. But any roundabout that doesn't explicitly tell you to yield to those within is the opposite. As you enter, you are on the right, so you have the right of way. This is when having a French instructor is invaluable. And going through the process of studying 2 books gave me a newfound sense of literacy. It didn't solve for the absolute insanity of how they handle roundabouts, but at least I could read the signs. It took about 2 weeks, because everything takes 2 weeks, for me to be officially accepted into the system. But by that time, I had already completed both books and all of my drive time with Arnaud in and around Paris. And I definitely took advantage of the chance to drive around the city a bit more when he offered. So honestly, I didn't find it that stressful. I was ready. It was Friday, and there was a slot for a practical exam the next Wednesday. If I could pass the written test immediately, I'd be set to try for the practical within a week. I took my registration number and went down to one of the testing centers that wasn't too far away, although it was down a bit of a creepy alley by a church, and got turned away.
Yeah, no, apparently the thing is I gotta wait 48 hours before I'm allowed to take the test. I don't know why.
Because despite taking 2 weeks to get officially into the system, it takes another 48 hours from issuing the registration number before it's considered valid. I had to wait over the weekend before I could take the test.
Totally legit. Anyways, it's Monday. I was able to sign up for a test this morning, so I'm taking it at 2 o'clock. Hope I pass it on the first go. Cost 30 euros. See you on the other side.
At the testing center, they have a few rows of desks with tablets on them, and you take the test at whichever one is free whenever your slot is. Once you've registered and paid, which you can do online, you have to watch a 5-minute instructional video telling you what the test is going to be like and ensuring that the settings suit you. Then you've got 40 questions to answer in 20 minutes. The timer gives you 30 seconds per question, and there's no way to skip forward once you've answered. You have to get a score of at least 35 out of 40 to pass.
I missed it by 2 questions. Ugh. 2 were grammatical things where I was like, oh, I can't tell for sure which way this is going. And there's a series of them where they double down on certain things. But like, if you know this, you're getting easy points. If you don't know this, you are screwed. And unfortunately, I think those are the ones that I didn't know. So 7 wrong out of 40. You can only get 5 wrong. You have to have 88% or higher to pass. But these guys are gonna let me take it again right away. I just gotta go get 30 euros in cash to try again. And we'll just keep going for it.
Anyways, I got 33 out of 40 on the first try, and you need 35 out of 40 to pass.
All right, cash required. It's definitely a roller coaster of emotion going through it too, because there are moments where I felt super calm, others where I felt a little more stressed, a little bit like, then you start thinking, because also you can't skip ahead. So one of the things that's nice about the practice test is once you've made your answer, you can go to the next question. With this, you have to wait the full 20 seconds between questions, which, I mean, slows the pace, but definitely gives you time to reflect on how you're gonna disappoint the world by not passing on your first try. Which, to be honest, after taking all these practice tests, I would have been pleasantly surprised if I passed on the first try. Hoping that I passed on the second. I don't want to keep doing this. It's gonna get expensive if I keep spending 30 euros per failure. So last try for today. If I fail, I'll have to come back tomorrow.
And I was ready for attempt number 2. Not before watching the same 5-minute instructional video I had just seen, but still.
Broke my phone, but I got it. Whew. I only had one mistake that time. I got it. They were super impressed. They said most people don't get it on their first try anyways, and most people leave after one failure. So they just said bravo a whole lot. And for this test, they were really impressed. And I'm very happy that it's over. I have my code. I've passed it. I never have to take another driving test again, I hope. Went back in, nailed it. I missed it by 2 last time. I won it by 4 this time. That's a great feeling. It's so good to have that done and behind me. Oh man, no more studying. Finally, thank God. Okay. Now I need to text Arnaud because there's a chance I could take the practical on Wednesday and hopefully pass that on my first try too.
I passed with a score of 39 out of 40. This meant that I was ready for that practical exam on Wednesday, 2 days later.
All right, today is the day. Where's the car? Salut. I thought.
We drove out to Massy, where the test would be, it almost rhymed, a couple of hours early so that Arnaud could show me some of the trickiest spots that might show up during the test. There's a roundabout that needed to be treated like an intersection. There was an intersection with 3 additional Priorite à droite, one after the other. It was an intersection with 5 roads, and if you had to turn left, you had to give the right of way to literally everyone else before turning left. And there were tiny little signs that told you that, and if you didn't notice that, you fail. There was also a roundabout with a single stoplight in the middle of the roundabout, interior of the roundabout, which you would never notice unless you knew. It's all surprising stuff. And I actually met somebody after taking this test who had failed his test in Massy because he ran that light. So thank you, Arnaud, for showing me all these things in advance. It made all the difference, even just for my confidence. Anyways, we drove around practicing for an hour and a half. Then we had lunch and took a breather walking through the most ridiculous mall that I have seen in a long while. Like straight out of the 90s. Basically, it's basically like they just transplanted it out of my worst childhood memories.
I didn't know they exported that smell. I thought that was a smell that only stayed in my childhood.
Ready to go.
I'm feeling good and confident. The closer we get to it, I'm starting to feel a little nervous, a little stressed, but I think that's normal. Well, we should start here in like 20 or 30 minutes and I'll let you know how it goes. Definitely not filming during.
Proctor walks up, lets us know how things will go and what to expect. He says to wait until he's ready before getting in the car and finishing his paperwork. A minute goes by, he's in the car, and then he gets back out of the car and he says, there's a problem. Which is never what you want to hear, but especially not from a French bureaucrat.
Je sais pas si c'est le bon mot.
So we didn't get to do it because again, the dossiers take 48 hours or whatever. The results from the test that we just did are not on their system yet, despite the fact that they'll be up in like 30 minutes and the guy's not willing to move anything around or wait for us, or a little bit frustrated. We came out here, it's a long ways out of Paris. Came here, spent a while practicing. Now we're just gonna get to go home. Really annoying. I was hoping this was the last time I'd ever have to come out here, but anyways, the joys of bureaucrats.
Vive la France.
Vive la France. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say that, but okay.
My passing score also needed to be in the system for 48 hours to be valid. It had only been 47 and a half hours. Like, what the actual f***?
Just trying to resuscitate my brain. I'm exhausted after today, holy cow. And I didn't even take the test.
Rules are rules, he told us, and you need to respect them. This wouldn't count against me, he assured us, but I had to come back a week later. A week later. Needless to say, we were both of us displeased. The following week, we complained a lot in the car on the way back. The following week, we took a slot and made it back out to Massey. May I never return to Massey again. Please, God, please. This time we went straight out. No need to practice, let's just get this done. And get it done we did. The new guy, we got a new proctor, was straightforward and hardly said a word. The interesting thing is that the first portion of the test they call autonome, like autonomous driving, where he just gives you signs to follow. Says follow this sign for this, follow that sign for that, just to see how you handle traffic on your own. And then the second half of the test, he's actually telling you, I want you to turn there, I want you to stop here, I want you to park here, I want you to go like straight backwards for 100 meters. That's kind of the two portions of the test. And the only mistakes that I made, at least that I knew of, were going a little too slow 2 times when the speed limit changed, and lightly bumping the curb when parallel parking, which was terrifying, but thankfully, apparently didn't count against me. We got back, I finished the test, we parked, and he told us that we'd have the results in, wait for it, 48 hours. Because of course—
Just so you know, I think I passed my driving test today.
Oh, shit! You don't get the results right away?
No, because it's France. It's gonna take 48 hours.
Hey, Québec, c'est comme ça. Québec, c'est tu roules avec le dent. À la fin, fais-moi un parking parallèle à reculons. Bon, là, tu passes pas le test, là. Aujourd'hui, tu passes pas, t'as raté ta lumière rouge à l'arrêt. Prochaine fois, and then he leaves the car. Ça, c'est l'examen. Et 48 heures, pourquoi? Y a-tu bien conduit ou pas? Il a failli tuer quelqu'un. Hein? 48 heures. C'est que la France, c'est long, là. Ouais.
I think it's the only country that does that, as far as I know. Does your country do that? Do they not tell you if you passed or failed right then and there? Because they tell you in America.
Nous, c'est comme right away.
Give it 2 days, and you're gonna be completely shocked to find out that I still didn't have the results.
How does that happen in America?
Same thing. They'll just be like, yeah, you failed.
Yeah, in England it's the same. It's like
Another day, however, and they finally came in. I'd only missed 1 point. I got a 30 out of 31. Not bad. I have that too, actually. I can show you. Perfect scores everywhere except for this one, which was basically my situational awareness for going too slow twice, because we left the town and went out and the speed limit went up and I didn't see the sign because they're not always easy to spot. And instead of speeding up right away, I kind of was like waiting and he was like, you can go faster. That happened twice. Whatever. I passed. And with that, I was in the clear. And that's how I was immediately able to drive. As soon as you have these test results, you can use them to drive until your license arrives in the mail. It's been really, really fun to be able to go out and drive again. Like I have that renewed sense of freedom that, granted, I'm really happy to live a life without cars and I've done it for a long time and I don't need one, but the ability to go out and explore like this, to visit friends, to take friends with you on little adventures, pretty glamorous. Of course, you have to reassemble the exact same dossier as the original application process in order to get the final license, because of course you do. Like nearly nothing has changed. You just have to get new photos and the exact same documents that you put together the last time, and you have to send that in again. And then 6 weeks later, theoretically, your license arrives, which fortunately happened to me because Arnaud was nice enough to send it in for me. So it went nice and smooth. And you can see on the back the classifications of cars I'm allowed to drive. And that means that we can go out and drive around the country and do fun stuff. And I even signed up for like a scooter account here in town, a City Scoot. So now I can drive 50cc scooters or lower around. I'll have to get my unlimited license. I have my Washington State motorcycle license, which of course does nothing for me here, so I will have to pass a separate test to get my motorcycle license, but I can drive 50cc and lower around, so we can bounce around that way. And I cannot wait to take you out and around the country with me as well, and then all of Europe. Of course, any good road trip demands snacks. If you made it this far into the video, consider subscribing to see those adventures as they unfold in 2022. And if you want to be a part of planning those adventures, then hop on over to Patreon and become a member today. Thanks to all of my patrons for making this possible, of course, and thank you to you for watching. And if you're out there to get your French license, I hope that this gave you some sense of hope, or some sense that it doesn't have to be that bad. It's a lot of work, you gotta put some effort in, but hey, you get out of it what you put into it. And I believe you can put a lot into it. So yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Adios.